Hey guys, it's takasta here again. Welcome to another video review. So today I'll be reviewing the CM Store Mizar mouse. So this is one of two mice offered from CM Store, the Mizar and the Alcor. They both spot the same chassis, ergonomic feature. The only difference is really one spots a laser sensor, one spots the good AlphaGo 3090 sensor. So I did my other video review, so I talked about a lot of things which are similar applicable, but if you haven't watched that video review, I'll talk about it here as well. So on to the background, I guess there are a lot of players, again, the IE3, the Death Adder, and the Rival. So this is really a good, solid offering and competitor at this price point. For this is priced at actually $45 US as compared to the Alcor's 39. So for $45, what it's offering is really 9800, the AlphaGo 9800. So for most 9800 mice, I believe they offer it at maybe a lot more expensive. We're talking about the Sensei, we're talking about the Razer. You have a lot of line of Razer mice, the Taipan for example. They offer like $69, $79, $89. This is, however, I bought it for only for 45 US. So I don't know if it's going to be offered the same price at where you live, but I believe at this price point, this is an amazing offering for what they're selling. So on to the weight and the shape. So I talked a little about this in my other video, but I'll talk about it again. This is a fairly light mouse. It is, even though this is laser, this is 87 grams plus or minus as well. Similar to that of the Alcor, which is, I guess, kind of odd. I thought they'd make this slightly heavier or whatever. The dimensions are 60.4 by 40.2 by 124.8 millimeters. So in terms of its shape, weight, it is quite light mouse and it is relatively smaller. It is slightly smaller than the Death Adder, slightly smaller than the IE3. I do feel like I'm repeating myself, so if you have watched the other video, this is gonna sound exactly the same. So I might just do a small video saying like what the differences are. In terms of its build quality, again, it uses like the same build quality as the Zoe FK. It uses some kind of like UV coating or something, which means that if you have kind of really dry hands, it may feel a little bit slippery. If you have a little bit moisture in your hands, it would be perfect. Even if you sweat a bit, I think this material would hold up quite well. So overall build quality, quite nice. You are paying for what you're getting, so I think what you're paying is definitely worth your buck. In terms of the cord, the biggest difference, again, this is a braided cord compared to the Alcor's non-braided cord. So some people like braided, some people not. They differentiate this just for the sake of differentiating, I feel. The braided cord is relatively thin compared to other braided cords. The Kana V2 has a fairly thick braided cord. This is a fairly slim braided cord. It does not tangle, which is very nice. This is just my personal opinion that it doesn't tangle. You can try tangling it, but I believe it should hold up for quite a good time. We want to like maybe the side buttons. So these side buttons, if I don't think I explained the other video, but the side buttons or the switches in general, the side buttons are fairly hard when you press on them. So it's not very easy to actuate them. When you press on them, it does take a little bit of force, so you don't have to worry about accidentally pressing on them. For the actual switches, the mouse 1 and mouse 2, they use Omron 20 million switches, which are made in China, contrary to, well, what I saw from the pictures, they're made in China, but they say it's made in Japan. So I don't know what happened there, but these switches, they feel, well, if you've ever used any other mouse with Omron switches, you know, Death Adder, Kana V2, Steel Series, I know that they don't use Omrons, but a lot of other mice use Omrons as well. So they basically feel the same. The implementation is very similar to that of the IE3 or the Kana V2. So Omron switches, very, very nice. So really nothing to complain about that. Moving now on to the sensor performance. So this mouse, different to the Alcor, it does use the 9800, basically the supposedly best performing laser sensor out there. So the laser sensors in general, they have a big problem, is that they have inherent acceleration, at the sensor level. So what this means is you won't get pixel per pixel perfect tracking per se. So some people like this, some people don't mind this, a lot of people hate this. So this is just something that you have to take into account. However, also one thing is that it on high DPI settings at 1000 Hertz, the mouse does jitter quite a bit. So there's something called smoothing, in which the programmers or the manufacturers, they can program into the firmware or the MCU to kind of calculate, and basically what smoothing is there is some input lag, and by doing that to calculate the jitter, it reduces the jitter. So there is a fair bit of smoothing, I feel like, in this mouse. So when you use it at higher DPI settings, it would be a lot smoother than some of the other 8200 AlphaGo 8200 implementations by other companies. So personally, I think this is okay. I think well, it's good. I can't really feel the input. Like I can feel it, but it's not that big of a deal. When I play Dota 2, it really just works fine. In terms of so I think that in terms of performance, they have done quite a good job. In terms of other things that to talk about with the sensor performance, with the polling rate, you could set it from, like, there were like 8 settings that you could set the polling rate from: 100 hertz, 111 hertz, 125 hertz, 250, 333, or like there's some weird numbers that you can set it at. So there are about like 8 to 9 settings that you can do. Also with this mouse, they have onboard memory, and they have profiling, they have macro, they have all of that. So if you need to program any of your buttons, if you need to save it into a profile, you can do all that stuff. So I think that's pretty standard among a lot of new gaming mice nowadays. So moving on to maybe other factors like the scroll wheel. The scroll wheel is quite light. It uses like, I'll have to read this again, high impact Alps encoder wheel for precise scrolling. That's what it says on the box. But basically it's very little stop between each notch. It's very easy. It's very light to scroll through. So, but some people might find it too light. I find it might be too light if I'm scrolling through weapons on an FPS game, for example. But some people might like it. I mean, in terms of scroll wheels, it's not one of my favorites. But I guess it does the job. In terms of lighting, this is a difference between the Mizar and the Alcor. The Mizar does light up in the scroll wheel, the Alcor doesn't. So just a small difference, no big deal. In terms of the lighting, you can, with this, there are drivers. With the Alcor, I'm not too sure if there are drivers yet. You can set the lighting into like 7 different colors. I believe there's a blue, white, green, yellow, purple, teal, or something like that. So you can just set it here, and you can set it to be pulsating. You can set it to be always on, always off. It's all in the firmware, which leads me to my firmware. If you look at the firmware here, there's a lot of things that you can do with it. It's pretty, well, I was going to say intense, but maybe more appropriate word is comprehensive. You can set everything, there are 4 profiles, set the XY axis, you can go through 4 DPI on-the-fly switching, which is quite convenient. I personally only use like 2 maximum. Really just 2 maximum, so I don't see why you would do that in any case. Usually you switch between like a high one and a low one. Other things you can do, you can change the button response time, you can change the very comprehensive macro programmability. So there's a lot of things you can do with this firmware. I believe this is one of the firmware has just quite been standardized now. There's nothing really that pops out. Maybe the Rocat's like achievement system kind of popped out at me and scared me, but I think this really just does the job, which is okay. In terms of last but not least, the liftoff distance is quite low. Liftoff distance is maybe like 2 millimeters or 3 millimeters. It's fairly low, so that's never been a problem with laser mice in general. So hope you guys like that quick video review of the CM Store Mizar. I think the Mizar and the Alcor are both very solid offerings for what they're providing, basically good bang for the buck. For $45 US, I'll definitely recommend it to anyone who has liked laser sensors or laser mice, I guess, such as the G500S, for example, C700S, or like a lot of other laser mice, like for example from Razer as well. So if you like those, I think this might be a solid offering. Again, it's a ergonomic shape, slightly smaller than DAIE, very similar shape to them, has a lower profile. Is like the Zoe FK in terms of its coating, it's UV coating, and that's about it. So I hope you guys like that. If you like that, please like it, subscribe. If you need a mouse or anything, you can visit my store at itech.com. And really, most importantly, thanks for watching and supporting.